Hi everybody, my name is Terry O'Mahony and I'm delighted to welcome you to this Construction Leaders podcast. Our featured guest today is Anya Novak, who is from UKTI, but she'll tell you more about that in due course. Anya is a consultant and delivers information to prospective clients of the UKTI service. Again, she'll tell you more about that in a minute. But in the first instance, Anya, can you just tell us who you are, what your background is, why you're doing what you're doing, and what are you doing?
Hi Terry, well it's really good to be here and to have this opportunity to chat with you. I am, as you say, I'm an international trade advisor working on behalf of UK Trade and Investment in the East Midlands. There's about 22 of us here in this county looking after companies. Now, I got into this because I was in export sales for about 16 years in various sectors, and I decided I wanted to go into more of an advisory role. So I was thinking, how can I develop the export sales knowledge plus an advisory role? And I saw this opportunity for an international trade advisor and thought, that sounds absolutely fascinating. So what I do is I go out to companies in the region, mainly small, medium-sized enterprises of all different sectors and backgrounds, and I advise them on export strategy.
But you're not specifically construction, are you?
No, construction is an area that I've recently just got into, and I've volunteered to be the sector champion, so that means I try to find out who the main stakeholders are in the region and what opportunities are happening overseas within that sector. We also have links with the trade associations, such as the Construction Equipment Association. So we try to keep abreast of trade events and missions and opportunities.
Right, okay. Where are you based, actually?
I'm based from home. I work from a home office, but we do have offices in Leicester and Derby as well. So,
And you cater for how big a region?
Oh goodness, well it's the East Midlands, so we're covering Northamptonshire, Lincolnshire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Rutland as well.
Yeah, which
Leicestershire,
in a way is a massive region and certainly of interest to all our listeners. So how did you get into this then, Anya? I mean,
well, as I say, it was really coming from an export sales background.
Yeah. I was thinking more in in relation to construction, though.
Yeah, construction.
Was it something you volunteered for?
I did.
You did. Wow.
We have sector champions for all different areas. So we've got an education sector champion, and really, it's their remit is to be aware of major exhibitions happening across the globe, any trade events, any big opportunities. So, for example, in the construction arena, I'd be looking at, big things like stadia build overseas. So we might be looking at Rio Olympics, or there's, hospital builds in Middle East, that sort of thing. So anything like that, I try and keep abreast of what's happening.
So just trying to be clear for our listeners. So you're our sector champion.
Yes.
For export initiatives arising out of the East Midlands.
Yes. Yeah.
So anybody who's a professional services provider, contractor, a manufacturer within the industry.
Yeah, that's right.
We could come to you for advice and support, and you could help us export to, well, presumably anywhere in the world.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's really about, if a company's got a product or a service that is a little bit different and it's got, the unique selling point. Yeah. So what makes it stand out from something that someone could buy overseas, and why would they come to us for it when they could buy it next door? It's finding that something a little bit special, maybe a unique proposal, maybe going in at a particular price which slots nicely into the market, or it might be something completely different that no one's ever seen.
Yeah. So if somebody's got a product or a service in our industry, and let's just imagine we're a McDonald's. So our first McDonald's restaurant, I'm talking equivalents, is in Derby, let's say. Wouldn't we want to roll that out through the rest of the UK rather than going off to Rio de Janeiro or Johannesburg or wherever else? Because, to a small business, it sounds like a hell of a challenge. Or is it?
It's a really good question that you asked that. And what I would say is we really make clear when we do a diagnostic, when we first talk to companies, we really gauge where they're at within the UK business. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. What we don't want to happen is that they try and dive into export when the domestic market isn't properly catered for and they don't have processes in place to deal with that correctly. Because obviously, if you imagine once you open yourself up to, in theory, the whole of the world, you've got to have your processes in place, you've got to have the right people in place, because you're opening yourself up to potentially huge orders, should your product be successful. So we would always advise people and work with them to make sure that their UK setup was robust, that they had a sufficient turnover, sufficient profitability and sufficient, staff in place to deal with that before we then start to focus on export.
Well, before we started this conversation, you were telling me about one of your clients who went out to the Middle East, I think you said. So is that your win-win story of today?
One of my favourite win-win stories, and there's lots of them. Ethiopia, of all places.
Ethiopia, right, okay.
Shall I just give you a bit of an overview of that? I have a client who deals, it's material handling, but it's pallet racking in particular. So they're able to furnish big companies with pallet racking. They can do bespoke design to fit a particular premises, so wherever that might be. Now, they had an inquiry from Ethiopia and were able to win the contract and actually developed bespoke racking for 27 sites across Ethiopia. Now, this was a sort of one-off order, and they thought, well, hold on, if this opportunity exists, surely there's more scope to do more in this country. So I engaged with our partners in Addis Ababa, because we have an office there, we've got an embassy over there, and they actually did some research on behalf of my client, which they paid for, but it was heavily subsidised by UK government. And they organised for my client to go over to the embassy, hire the embassy for the afternoon, do a talk on their company, and they invited about 100 companies, very big names. There was Ethiopia Air, there was KPMG, Coca-Cola, a lot of big blue chip companies. And in the event, they had 45 companies attend. And in the afternoon, they also went on a tour around these factory sites where my client could show these people what they'd done and they could see the pallet racking in situ. So that was win-win in effect, that my client had already done business there, but through the help of the embassy, and again, any client could do this. It is a chargeable service, but it's really heavily supported by UK government. We can find agents or distributors for people. We can do product launches for you at any embassy worldwide. And this is available for construction companies. So, let's go back to the Middle East. If there's a big opportunity there for some building, get out there and show people what you're capable of and use us to help you do that.
So this particular example then, that this is a manufacturer, perhaps a designer, manufacturer, installer of pallet racking.
Yes.
Which is, in effect, a fit-out service within a building.
Yes.
So from a construction perspective, we could have people who could design that building, fabricate the building, construct the building, assemble the building, and fit it out. So there's all kinds of opportunities, not just for somebody who does pallet racking.
No, it goes throughout the whole spectrum, as you say, and also from a consultancy point of view as well. If you've got people who are consultants in, how to bring all of those different pieces together,
and we do have,
there's opportunity for that as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it could be absolutely anything from the person who develops the nuts and bolts to put the pallet racking together, to the actual pallet racking itself, and then all the way through to having it installed and on show.
I understand one of the big success stories in our region, though, is an architectural practice called Benoy, who are based in Newark. I understand they've done incredible amounts of work due to your service and introducing them to overseas markets. So the scope for us all, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, we deal with companies from, really turnover-wise, there's no limit. We'll deal with companies who are startups, and we'll deal with companies, like Benoy or like Rolls-Royce or Triumph. There's really no
so long as they're ready for exporting and they've got, as you say, the processes and systems and other resources in place to deal with the challenges of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one thing that UK Trade and Investment does. and I suppose really I'm one of the ambassadors of UK trade and investment in the region, and we cover the whole of the UK, is we will go out and chat to companies and ask the right questions so that we find out, are you ready? Are you prepared? And if not, how can we help you prepare to go out to market?
Right.
And it can be a challenge, there's things that we need to prepare people about. One of the big concerns is getting paid. Some people say, well, if I'm selling to Australia, I can't just literally pick up the phone or walk down the street and get payment from people. But there's all sorts of things you can put in place.
Right. It's not as risky or as demanding as people might.
It
might
doesn't
think.
need to be, but you need to carry out the correct research, and we can help you with that.
Okay. So that's a great win-win story then. So, given your remit, what's your primary focus at the moment? What, as the Americans say, what's lighting your fire at the moment?
Well, there's a big push at the moment. I suppose there really always is this push through the UK government to really focus on first-time exporters. Now, this can almost be from people starting up a business to people really reasonably well established on the UK side of things. They might have only been going a couple of years, but they're just starting to think about export. So we're trying to plant the seeds and advise them, the right types of companies, to say, well, look, it's not quite as scary as you think, as long as you followed these simple points and you adhere by these guidelines, and we'll help them into export. But we have a target in the UK, which is that we're looking at getting exports to £1 trillion by 2020. And the last time I checked, we were just over halfway there. So we've got quite a bit of work to do. But, we're confident we can do it. There's a lot of support mechanism in place. With the likes of, what your offer is as well, the Construction Leaders Club, there's networking opportunities, the sharing of knowledge and intelligence. And again, the UKTI is a massive network of 107 country-located offices. We've got 4,000 people worldwide working for us. So it can happen.
Yeah, well, the bottom line to it is about people, and when people meet, things happen.
Yeah, it's people who you like and you trust and you want to do business with, and you keep going back and doing it.
Yeah.
And as long as there's nothing scary or surprising happens within that relationship, there's no reason why you can't continue and develop it.
Okay, that's good. So just moving on, do you have such a thing as a habit or a resource that you tend to apply to your life that helps you be successful, makes your life easier, something you recommend that other people ought to do?
It's a really simple one, and it's not a new one. I write everything down.
Oh, so when you think it, you ink it?
Yeah. Some of the things I do keep confidential, so it will be, if I know my client's got a birthday coming up, I'll make a note in my diary to congratulate them on their birthday, and, they might even get a card from us. Or if someone said to me, either I'm going to be a father in 2 weeks or something, or, it's personal information that I think is important. It means a lot to them. And I like to remember that when I next go and see them, and I'll ask them, how's things going? How's the family going? How's this? And you mentioned, you had a party last week. Just small bits of info.
Sounds like good record keeping then.
Yes, and also obviously I keep a lot of detailed records of company visits, which we have to do, and that's highly confidential. We have that on a central database, which is UKTI encrypted. Obviously, it's data protection, so that's highly confidential information. But we put as much information in there as we can, because that is accessed by embassies worldwide. So if they want to find out some information about that company, obviously this won't be the personal information. That's something I keep and then shred after I've used that information. They can access it and find out all they need to know about the company. So turnover, number of employees, where they export to, and things like that. So
on a smaller scale, for some of our listeners, to parallel that experience, they need a CRM system, customer relationship management system, so they can keep a track of who their clients are, what connections they've had with them, what they've said, what's important, and that creates a database, and you can use a database to have ongoing communications with the client.
It can vary sometimes. I mean, I've worked in businesses where they've just been starting out, and I've been the first export salesperson there, and we've literally worked off Excel sheets. So it's a little bit tricky to have that continuation of the contact on there unless you've got your own system in columns and rows, etc. But one of the advantages of a really great CRM is that you've got every single point of contact, so any person who goes in throughout that company can see, what brochures were they sent, who phoned them, when did they phone them, what did they discuss. So there's no repetition, there's no duplication of calling and asking them again for the same information. So it can work really well, and also from a marketing point of view as well.
Yeah, really powerful tool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming to the end now, Anya. 2 final points. Have you got a parting piece of advice for our listeners? I mean, bearing in mind that you're a construction industry ambassador for UKTI, your remit is to get people to engage with the possibilities of overseas markets, etc. What's your parting shot for our listeners?
Well, this parting shot was one that my father always told me, and he still does, and it's again extremely simple. His phrase is, see the people, see the people, see the people. Now, my father was a salesman all of his life. His notion was, he was a salesman, and all of us are in some way, shape or form a salesperson. They're either selling themselves, and let's face it, pretty much all of us are at some point in the day, or they're selling a product, or they're selling benefits of that product or service. So they need to go out there and see the people, ideally the right types of people who can buy their product or service at the right price and it's the right time. But really, the cleverer you get at seeing the right people and networking correctly and effectively, the more chance I believe that you've got of actually developing your business and developing your networks and ultimately becoming more profitable.
I hope our listeners clued into that one. That's wonderful, thank you. So if anybody needs some advice, they're interested but not so sure, how do they move things forward? How do they make contact with you?
Well, what I would suggest is certainly have a chat with me at the Construction Leaders Club. Very happy to talk to you.
Yeah, you kind of attend every month, don't you?
I try to, yes. Yeah. So any time there, I'm more than happy to speak to someone. Or right. You can give me a call, and my number is 07769 235 307. Or you can send me an email, and I'll spell this one out. So it's Anya, ANYA, .Novak, NOVAK, at mobile.ukti.gov.uk. So that's probably the longest email known to man. But
I think it's easier to ring you.
You can either give me a ring or speak to me at the Construction Leaders Club, and I'll be happy to advise.
Brilliant. Okay, Anya, thank you very much for your time.
You're more than welcome. I've
really
enjoyed
appreciate it. And I certainly hope people out there who are listening to this, who are considering, on the cusp of thinking, whatever, about the potentiality of exporting. It's a big world out there. Lots of people need what we do, and I believe buying British is a good idea throughout the world. So, yeah, I would encourage all our listeners to speak to you, Anya, and thank you for your time today.
Many thanks, Terry.
Okay, take care then. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.